All right, so you hopped in your car, and something's not quite right.
Yeah.
You got that smell, that gasoline smell.
Can be a little unnerving.
It is unnerving. You're thinking, like, is this safe? Is this going to cost me a fortune? What is going on?
Right.
So today we're going to deep dive into this article. Why does my car smell like gas? And we're going to try to give you the info you need.
Yeah, and I think the first thing to remember is that while the smell of gasoline is distinct, it's that sharp, strong chemical smell, it should never be something that you're smelling inside your car.
Right.
You're going to smell it at the gas station, sure.
Right.
But inside the car, that's a sign something is off.
Yeah, it's a red flag, like, pay attention to me.
Mm-hmm.
So what are some of the reasons?
Well, the article outlines 5 key reasons, and I think a gas leak is probably the most obvious one. But before we jump into specifics, it's important to understand what a gas leak actually means. It means that gasoline is escaping from somewhere in your car's fuel system. Now, this could be something as simple as a loose gas cap, or it could be something more serious like a cracked fuel line,
Oh, wow.
or even a damaged fuel tank.
So a leak isn't always obvious.
Wow.
What are some less obvious things?
Your fuel injectors.
Oh, yeah?
Their job is to spray the right amount of gas into your engine for combustion. If they're leaking, that gas can drip out, evaporate, and that's when you start to smell it.
But it's not a puddle or dripping. It could be how it's being used.
Mhm.
What are some other signs that it's a fuel injector issue?
Well, your engine might not be getting the fuel it needs, so you might notice it misfiring. It might feel a little sluggish,
Yeah.
like trying to run a marathon on an empty stomach.
Ooh, good analogy.
You just don't have the energy.
Okay, so we've covered leaks, fuel injectors. What's next?
It could be an issue with your exhaust system. Now, your exhaust system is designed to carry away harmful gases produced by the engine. But if there's a crack or a hole in the system, some of those gases, including unburned gasoline, can escape before they're supposed to. And you guessed it, that can lead to that gas smell, especially near the back of the car.
And I imagine a damaged exhaust is going to be pretty noisy, too.
You're exactly right. You might hear loud rumbling or roaring sounds coming from your exhaust, especially when you accelerate. So if you're smelling gas and hearing strange noises, that's a pretty good indicator that your exhaust system might need some attention.
So leaks, fuel injectors, exhaust problems. What else?
It could be a fault in something called the evaporative emission control system, or EVAP system for short.
The EVAP system.
You might not have heard of it before, but it's actually a pretty important part of your car's system. It's designed to prevent gas fumes from escaping into the atmosphere. If there's a problem with the system, those fumes could be leaking into your car's cabin, and that's what you're smelling.
I was looking at the article earlier, and there was a table in there that mentioned the check engine light coming on if there's an issue with that system. Is that something I should be worried about?
Absolutely. The check engine light is your car's way of saying, hey, something's not right here, you need to get this checked out.
Right.
If that light comes on, especially if you're also smelling gas, it's definitely time to consult a mechanic.
Okay, good to know.
Yeah.
So what's the last reason? Why is my car smelling like gas?
Well, the last one might be a bit harder to grasp, but it's what's called an engine running too rich. Essentially, this means your engine is using more fuel than it actually needs. This can happen for various reasons, often due to issues with sensors or spark plugs, which can kind of mess with the air-fuel mixture that your engine needs to run efficiently.
I think I saw this one in the article, too.
Yes.
He was talking about poor fuel economy, dark smoke coming from the exhaust.
That's exactly right.
What does that mean?
So think of it like this. For your engine to run smoothly and efficiently, it needs the right balance of air and fuel. Kind of like a perfectly baked cake needs the right proportions of ingredients.
I like that analogy.
If your engine is running too rich, it's like adding way too much butter to that cake recipe, it's going to throw everything off.
Yeah.
You'll end up with a mess. And in your car's case, that mess translates to poor fuel economy, possibly some smoky exhaust, and that lingering gas smell you've been noticing.
So we've talked about leaks, fuel injectors, exhaust systems, the EVAP system, and an engine running rich. A lot of technical stuff, but really it sounds like if you smell gas, something's wrong.
Exactly. And while we've gone over a lot of technical stuff, the important takeaway here is that anytime you smell gas inside your car, it's a signal that something isn't right and it needs to be addressed.
Yeah, absolutely.
Don't ignore it.
Okay, good advice. So we've talked about the problems, but what happens if you ignore them? We'll talk about that right after this break. Okay, so ignoring these problems, probably not a good idea. But what happens if you just ignore it?
Yeah.
Some people might be tempted to just, roll down the windows and hope it goes away.
Right.
Is that a big deal?
It might be tempting to downplay it, but ignoring a gas smell is definitely not a good idea.
Right.
Remember, gasoline is highly flammable, so even a small leak could potentially lead to a fire, especially when your engine is hot.
Wow. That's a serious risk.
Oh.
So it's not just the smell, it's actual safety.
Exactly. And beyond the safety concern, ignoring a gas leak is also just plain wasteful. Every drop of gas that leaks out is money down the drain.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Plus, remember what we talked about earlier? Those small problems can quickly turn into big ones if they're not addressed. A tiny leak today could lead to a major repair tomorrow, and that's when things can get really expensive.
Okay, so you smell gas in your car. What do you do? Where do you even begin?
Well, the article lays out some really practical steps you can take.
Okay.
First things first, check your gas cap. Make sure it's tightly closed and that there's no visible damage to the cap itself. A loose or cracked gas cap can be a surprisingly common culprit for those gas fumes escaping.
So simple, you could check that yourself. What's next?
The next step is to do a visual inspection for any leaks. Grab a flashlight and take a look underneath your car.
Oh.
Paying close attention to the area around the gas tank and fuel lines. You're looking for any signs of dripping gasoline. Even a small puddle could be a red flag.
Okay, so I've checked the gas cap. I don't see any puddles, but I still smell gas. Should I call a mechanic?
If you've done those initial checks and you're still concerned, then absolutely it's time to consult a mechanic.
Okay.
They have the expertise and the tools to really pinpoint the source of the smell and recommend the best course of action. Trying to diagnose and repair anything beyond a loose gas cap yourself can be risky and potentially dangerous.
So how do you know when it's something you can fix versus something for a mechanic?
That's a great question. If it's something as simple as tightening a loose gas cap, you can probably handle that yourself. But if you're suspecting a leak, or if you're hearing those strange noises we talked about earlier, or if your car isn't performing as it should,
Right.
it's always best to err on the side of caution and let a professional take a look.
Yes. Yeah, better safe than sorry. So let's shift gears a little bit and talk about prevention.
Okay.
The article emphasized the importance of regular car maintenance. Is that all it takes to avoid this?
Regular maintenance is definitely key. Think of it like going to the doctor for checkups. It's much easier to catch and address small issues before they turn into big, expensive problems.
Right.
When it comes to your car, this means staying on top of those oil changes and tune-ups. A mechanic can also check your fuel lines, hoses, and other components for any signs of wear and tear and replace them if needed.
I've always wondered about this. The article mentioned that overfilling your gas tank can actually contribute to problems.
Well,
Why is that?
it seems counterintuitive, right? But overfilling can actually cause liquid gas to get into the vapor canister, which is part of that EVAP system we talked about earlier.
Oh, right.
This can overwhelm the system, causing it to malfunction and potentially release those gas fumes into your car.
Okay, so stop at the click. No more squeezing those extra drops in.
Exactly.
You also mentioned earlier a damaged gas cap.
Yes.
What should people look out for?
Gas caps can wear out over time, just like any other part of your car. They can become cracked, or the seal can deteriorate, which means they're not doing their job of keeping those fumes contained. So take a look at your gas cap. If you notice any cracks, or if it just looks worn out, it's a good idea to replace it. It's a simple fix that can prevent a lot of potential headaches down the road.
All right, so those were the main points from the article, but people always have questions.
Of course.
So let's go through some FAQs. Is it okay to drive a car that smells like gas?
The short answer is no. As we discussed earlier, driving with a gas smell could be extremely dangerous due to the fire risk. Plus, you could be causing further damage to your car by ignoring the problem. It's best to play it safe and get it checked out right away.
Okay, what about the cost of fixing a gas leak?
I understand that concern. The cost can really vary depending on what's causing the problem. A simple fix, like a loose gas cap, might only set you back a few dollars. But if it's something more serious, like replacing a fuel line or even the fuel tank, you could be looking at hundreds or even thousands of dollars. That's why it's so important to catch these issues early on.
Right, so how do you know if you can fix a gas leak yourself or if you need to take it to a mechanic?
Well, if it's something simple like tightening a loose gas cap, then you can probably handle that yourself.
Right.
But for anything more complex, it's really not worth the risk. Working with gasoline can be dangerous if you don't know what you're doing. A professional mechanic has the knowledge, the experience, and the right tools to handle these repairs safely and effectively.
So why does my car sometimes smell like gas after I fill up the tank?
That's a good question. There are a couple of possibilities. We talked about overfilling the tank earlier, which can definitely be a culprit. But it could also be a sign of a small leak somewhere in the fuel system, maybe a loose connection or a slightly damaged hose. Even if it seems minor, it's always best to get it checked out just to be safe.
Okay. And will a gas leak always trigger the check engine light?
It definitely can. If your car's computer system detects a problem with the fuel system, like a leak in the evaporative system,
Right.
or if it senses that your engine is running too rich, it'll likely trigger the check engine light. So if you see that light come on, especially in combination with a gas smell, that's a clear signal that you need to get your car checked out by a mechanic as soon as possible.
Wow, we've covered a lot of ground today, and I'm feeling a lot more informed about all the different causes of the gas smell, the risks of ignoring it, and the steps you can take to address it and prevent it.
Absolutely. And while it might seem like a lot of information, the key takeaways are actually pretty straightforward. Pay attention to your car, don't ignore those warning signs,
Right.
and be proactive about maintenance.
We've covered a ton about why your car might smell like gas. Yeah, but what does it all really mean for you?
Well, if we zoom out and look at the bigger picture,
Okay.
this is all about understanding that your car, just like any other complex machine, needs regular care and attention.
I guess we tend to take our cars for granted
Exactly.
until something goes wrong.
And all those smells, sounds, and warning lights, they're not just annoyances.
Yeah.
They're your car's way of trying to communicate with you. Think of that gas smell as your car saying, hey, something's not right here. Let's get this checked out.
It's like our cars are speaking to us
That's a great way to put it.
in their own language.
And just like ignoring a pain in your body can lead to bigger health problems down the road.
Yeah.
Ignoring a gas smell can lead to those costly repairs or even dangerous situations we talked about.
Don't ignore the warning signs. So if I'm smelling gas, what are the most important things to remember?
First, don't panic. Most of these problems we've discussed are fixable, especially if you catch them early.
That's good to hear.
Yeah.
What's the first thing I should do? Should I immediately rush to a mechanic?
Well, not necessarily. Remember those simple checks we talked about? Check your gas cap.
Right.
Make sure it's on tight. And look for any obvious leaks. Those are things you can do yourself right away.
Okay.
And if you're still smelling gas after that, then absolutely, it's time to call in a professional.
So be proactive, but know when to get help.
Exactly. Think of it as an investment in your car's health and your own peace of mind. A mechanic can diagnose the problem accurately and advise you on the best course of action.
All right, so to recap, smelling gas inside your car, never a good sign.
Right.
It could be a leak, a problem with your fuel injectors, exhaust system, that mysterious evap system, or even your engine running too rich.
Not with those. Yep.
But the good news is most of these problems are fixable if they're caught early. And remember, the risks of ignoring a gas smell are serious. We talked about fire hazards, wasted fuel, and those potentially expensive repairs down the line.
Yeah.
It's just not worth taking the risk.
Absolutely. So to anyone listening out there who's dealing with that dreaded gas smell, pay attention to your car signals. Don't ignore the warning signs.
Right.
And if something seems off, don't hesitate to get it checked out. Better to be safe than sorry.
I once had a car come in that had been driven with a fuel leak for weeks. The damage was extensive, and it was a very close call. It's a stark reminder that a gas smell should never be ignored.
That's a story that definitely illustrates the point. So a little knowledge can go a long way. Now that you understand what that gas smell might mean and how to take action, you're empowered to keep your car running smoothly and safely.
One final thought to leave you with. We've focused on the smell of gas in your car.
Right.
But what other senses can you use to monitor your car's health?
Oh, interesting.
What sounds, vibrations, or even visual cues might be telling you that something needs attention?
Keep those senses sharp, and you'll be well on your way to a safe and enjoyable driving experience.
That's a great point to ponder. Thanks for joining us for this deep dive, and drive safely out there.